Hello. Today is the 9th of January 2018, and I'm Paul Glumaz, and I'm an activist in the international movement of Lyndon LaRouche here in Seattle. And this is being brought to you by my friends at General Welfare Presents. Oh yeah. This day, today, January 9th, 2018, we have some incredible and spectacular developments that are now occurring. Okay. Now you have to understand that Africa has been kept really back in time, has been kept really down. They've had all these resource wars, all these tribal wars, all these ethnic wars, Rwanda, Burundi, Sierra Leone, all these places. You have Boko Haram in northern Nigeria. You have the North Army in Uganda. It just never ends. You have the civil war in northern Sudan, and you have the civil war in southern Sudan, and on and on and on it goes. Right. And you don't have any real economic development going on. Now, what is happening is absolutely spectacular. The Chinese are extending the Belt and Road Initiative into Africa. And the idea is that Africa, with its over 1 billion people, is actually a net drain on the world economy, because the people cannot realize their potential, and they're underdeveloped. And the United States and Europe are disintegrating economically because they decided to deindustrialize and exploit the cheap labor in other places. And the cheap labor in other places, like in Latin America and Southeast Asia and India and Bangladesh and Africa, there's no development going there. So the planet has been drifting into a global loss of productive power. And what China has done with the One Belt and Road is to completely begin the process of reversing that, of building up the infrastructure. This would be like what Franklin Delano Roosevelt did for the United States in the early 30s, up through the World War II, doing this on a global scale in terms of infrastructure, water projects, energy projects. Now, this most spectacular development that's going on is that France, led by this young person by the name of Emmanuel Macron, is in Beijing right now, or he may be coming back now, but he's been in Beijing, and he has announced that he wants France to lead Europe into the Belt and Road with China. He wants to work for an anti-imperial development of Africa with China. And when you consider that Japan, a week and a half ago, announced that they're going to be working on development projects in China, with China in Africa, what does this mean? You have to get a sense of what this means. This is huge, because if you build in Africa the basic infrastructure, you're going to see an explosion of productive activity, agricultural productive activity, mineral extraction productive activity, industrial productive activity. It's going to be huge. Those people are going to be so happy to have, begin to have a working class living standard. And they're going to be so focused on developing this kind of identity as a worker that they're going to lose they're going to lessen their sense of being part of a tribe. It's going to unify these nations with different tribal factionals that have been manipulated for centuries. They are going to develop an identity beyond the tribal identity to one of being part of an industrially developing economy. And that is huge. And that's now starting. And this is enormous. This is like totally revolutionary. You can talk about all the revolutions in the world. All the leftists and the right-wingers can talk about revolutions all they want, but that's not real revolution. This is a real revolution. And let me tell you something. This is not what the Bush people wanted. That's not what the Obama people wanted. It's not what the British have wanted. It's not what anybody has wanted. Not the European oligarchy has wanted, but it's just the shift is taking place. So Macron of France is now smelling the winds of change, and he's decided to make France, or at least he said, he decided to make France a leader in bringing Europe into the Belt and Road. Now, this is enormous, okay? Now, coincidentally with this, you have the meeting of the unification minister of South Korea with the unification minister of North Korea in the context of the Olympic Games which are coming in, the Winter Olympics which are coming in South Korea. The U.S. has suspended its planned military exercises with the South Koreans, and you now have the beginnings of a discussion of coming back to a process of unifying the Koreas through economic development and through a gradual opening up between the two countries, which was going on until the Bush and Obama administration ended it. This is also very huge, and it seems to have the endorsement of the Trump administration, or publicly endorsement of the Trump administration. Simultaneous to this, you have a situation in the deep state issue, where the whole thing is about to turn on the FBI, on the Justice Department, on ultimately Brennan, the former CIA director, and James Clapper, the former head of national intelligence. And there is this former attorney, U.S. attorney from the Washington, D.C. area. His name is Joseph diGenova, and he had a radio interview in Washington, D.C. on a major radio station where he said the following. He said it was Admiral Michael Rogers who spilled the beans on the coup that was being set up inside the as Trump was coming into office. It was he who went without telling Clapper or Brennan. He's the one who went to talk to Trump about how they were being surveilled on November 17th. Okay, that the whole all of this illegal surveillance is documented, and the whole process is now starting to unravel, where the congressional committees are demanding all the records. They're demanding that all these people come and be interviewed, and there is a real crisis now occurring in the power structure of the FBI and the Justice Department, and this is huge. And there's now discussions of key people in the FBI and in the Justice Department going to prison at this point, and this is for real. At the same time, you have Senator Grassley asking for an investigation into Christopher Steele. Now, this is the British. This is the British interface with the FBI. This is the same crowd that's been running operations against Putin through their organized crime task force in Eastern Europe. This is the same group that's been running the operations against Lula in Brazil and Dilma. And Lula is running for president, and he's facing prison. And this is the setup run through the U.S. Justice Department. And the U.S. Justice Department takes claim for having intervened in the Brazilian situation. So the same grouping that's going after Trump in the FBI and the Justice Department was involved in operations against Vladimir Putin. They were involved in operations against Dilma Rousseff and Lula of Brazil. So this is and you could have a civil war emerge in Brazil if Lula goes to prison. He is the outstanding front runner right now for president of Brazil. And if they put him in prison and disqualify him as a candidate, the poor people of Brazil, the impoverished population of Brazil, could very well explode. This is being run from the U.S. Justice Department. This is being run with the hedge funds and the most corrupt elements within the judicial system of Argentina. This is the same thing going on in Argentina and Brazil. This is what is also going after Trump. So this is very significant. But you have to understand that for the last 50 years, the United States has been going backwards economically in terms of its productive potential. The only thing the United States has to command the wealth of the world is the fact that people still use the SWIFT electronic payment system. Countries still use that. They still use the dollar as the universal means of exchange. And the U.S. military is everywhere in the world. Now, to get the significance of the most recent situation, from the time of 9/11, 17 years ago, this was the justification for all of the wars, for all of the activity of the U.S. International activity, but also it's the justification for establishing in the United States the surveillance state. And now, the interesting thing about the surveillance state is that they have essentially created a situation where all electronic data is collected by the NSA. But as far as stopping terrorism, this is the most incompetent thing you can do because you can't sort through all this data. Even if you have various different triggers, you still can't go through it all, and a lot of them are false triggers, and it just creates a mess. But but it's useful if you want to blackmail people. If you Justice Department's going to blackmail somebody, it is useful. And so what Admiral Rogers has caught people doing is actually illegally unmasking people and to blackmail them, or in the case of Trump to go after people, and this is illegal. And this was going on in the Obama administration on a massive scale. So you had illegal operations being run against American citizens by the Justice Department, and so the political control in the U.S. is centered on this surveillance state. It's centered on the ability to come up with it, to pick out people, pick out their communications, and then blackmail them. This is how they got Spitzer, who was the governor. He was I believe he was the governor of New York State. No, he wasn't the governor. He was the attorney. He was the attorney general of New York, and he was going after the banks, and they were able to use this capability to locate him and the prostitute he liked to use to get him. And bring him down, and that was key in 2008. That was a key thing that happened that helped Obama come to power, was the takedown of Eliot Spitzer. But this is illegal. This is totally illegal. This is what has been developing in the United States under the context of 9/11. But it doesn't make you safe for terrorism, because the terrorism is being run by the same crowd. But it's the excuse to collect all this data. It's the excuse to have a surveillance state. And when Vladimir Putin was asked about this, he says, "This is totally asinine. You can't do intelligence this way. This is an ineffective way to do intelligence." And it is. But it's an effective way to set up a system of blackmailing people on a national scale. So anyhow, so now what's happening right now is the tables are being turned. on the coup. And the coup plotters are now potentially facing prison terms. And this is a huge development, a spectacular development. Now, to get a sense of the significance of all of this, I have to discuss with you the concept that some concepts of LaRouche. LaRouche wrote a paper that came out on February 9th, 2009, called "Now Comes Economic Time." And what LaRouche is saying in the paper is that the way people think about history, the way they think about economics, the way they think about time and space, not only in the scientific world but also in the political world, is that there's an interaction of billiard balls or the interaction of people, and that interaction over time leads to events. And in the case of physics, it's the interaction of particles. This is a Newtonian worldview. And this Newtonian worldview occurs in a space that is essentially doesn't have any geometry to it. It's a flat, it's a three-dimensional empty space. And that is the mindset that people have. But what Einstein showed and what Riemann earlier in Einstein showed is that no, space is physical. The curvature of space is different. That gravitation is really curved space, not the interaction of masses per se, and that from the LaRouche standpoint, the universe is not running down, because if you start with a particle concept, the interaction of particles actually leads to heat death, and the running down is what they call entropy. So from the standpoint of our scientific community, the universe is running down. And whereas the opposite is reality. Reality is that the universe is overcoming the running down process by new principles being introduced that is transforming the organization of the universe. And this is happening, this is the nature of the evolution of the universe. The universe is evolving to more advanced states, okay, of organization. Okay, it's not evolving to less advanced states of organization. It's evolving to greater states of organization. And if you look at the human being, when a human society makes a discovery of principle about how nature works, then applies that principle in the practice of the human being, of the society, what that does is it changes the very nature of the physical reality of the part of the universe that human beings are a part of. So a discovery of an existing principle governing the physical laws applied, like the discovery of the atom, for instance, or the discovery of fire, completely changes not only man's relationship to nature, but it changes nature itself in a way that it has never happened before. So this is human beings, the creativity of human beings is proof that the universe is creative. Because why would you have a universe that would evolve a creative species, human species, that was capable of creating, if it weren't fundamentally creative? That doesn't make any sense otherwise. But this is total heresy to the scientific community, to the political community, to the oligarchy, to everybody. And why is this important? Because the way people think about economics in the last 50 years is that the economy will take care of itself if you let the market decide, is one example. Or the value of anything is based upon what people are willing to buy it for. Right? The worst thing you can have is the intervention of government into economic affairs. This is totally contrary to what Hamilton represented, to what FDR represented, to what Lincoln represented. Okay, now what LaRouche is saying is that what's been going on in the U.S. has been a decline of attrition. We have obsolete technology, obsolete infrastructure, more so. We have massive repairs. We're actually in the process of attrition of our capital, and we're not replacing our capital. And we're and this is going on a global scale. So if it weren't for the Belt and Road, which is coming in to build the infrastructure all over the world, but also to promote the rebuilding of infrastructure in the United States and everywhere else, then you would not have a way to reverse this attrition, on a global scale, let alone in the U.S. But because of what the Chinese are doing, they are introducing more advanced technologies, like in rail construction and high-speed rail and so forth. But they're also committed to scientific development and a continuous scientific development, so that whenever there's a new scientific breakthrough, that scientific breakthrough is applied in the real economy. This is the direction of the Chinese. It's only beginning. It's only getting started. And the president of China is attacking the leadership of the Communist Party for not being intellectual enough, for not being thinking and rigorously thinking about these sort of things, having a competent sense of economics. So this is LaRouche in a Chinese form, beginning to take off and beginning to rebuild the world, so that we can escape the entropic tendencies, the tendencies of attrition that normally set in, and all societies collapse because they don't. All societies will tend to collapse because they don't make breakthroughs that bring them to a higher level, at higher energy density technologies, a greater because otherwise they're stuck with a fixed system with fixed resources, and so forth. But the mentality of the establishment of the United States and Europe, the oligarchy, is a world of scarce resources. Don't develop, conserve, cut back. But you can't do that. You'll destroy yourself, because you have to consume to develop. You have to expand. You cannot cut back. The human species cannot cut back, because we have to make further breakthroughs into the future to be able to survive into the future. We have to make breakthroughs. You don't survive as a species unless you make breakthroughs, and empires always collapse because they don't do that, because they have to loot, they have to exploit. They don't have the creativity within the empire because they don't value the importance of the individual that can make the creativity in an empire. All empires collapse. Now, it's remarkable that China has a continuous culture, a continuous civilization for 5,000 years. That's somewhat remarkable. No other culture has a continuity of 5,000 years. And in China, the leading Chinese intellectuals consider LaRouche to be a modern Confucius, like a modern Confucian type person. And so there's a Confucian revival in China, and it comes within that context that LaRouche's ideas would have resonance in China. So this Belt and Road thing is very immense. Now, the cover of New Yorker magazine, which is the literary magazine, monthly literary magazine of New York, but it's also read nationally, has the title "China Takes Charge," and it goes in, and then it has a subtitle on. It has a title for a major article on the cover: "The New Silk Road: China's Aggressive Move to Change the Way Trade is Done." And so this is big because it's the beginning of an awakening in the United States of the existence of something that the LaRouche movement has been telling you about for 4.5, almost 5 years. It is now beginning to come home. It's beginning now, and perhaps the best example of this is Foreign Affairs magazine, which is run by the neocons. They have gone completely berserk, attacking Trump, attacking China for bringing people out of poverty, because it's bad for bringing people out of poverty in the rural areas, because they'll be dependent on an urban living standard. It's totally insane. They've gone totally insane. They're advocating immediate bombing of North Korea. They've gone totally nuts. They're totally freaking out at the same time. So this is, and then you have Trump, right, saying he's a genius. he's playing with the media. He really is. And then he's saying, I have one bigger than Kim Jong Il, right? He's saying, I have one bigger than the Korean leader, right? And he's playing with people. He's playing. He's not serious. And people are going berserk, calling for the 25th Amendment. They want Trump removed on the 25th Amendment. He's not going to be removed by the 25th Amendment. So it's funny. It's kind of funny. I can't say how this is going to go because it's the financial system which is going to collapse next, and everything is now heading in that direction. But we're now in a mobilization to educate people on what has to be done on that.